Greetings Indie Warriors and welcome to I Dream of Indie. My name is OldGamer Joe and today we are bringing you a review of top-down action RPG Blossom Tales 2 on Steam. Blossom Tales 2 is the follow-up to 2017's Blossom Tales and was developed by Castle Pixel and published by Playtonic Friends. There's no denying the impact that 1991's SNES classic Link to the Past has had on gaming, and because it is such a special and memorable title, it's no surprise that all these years later, developers still look to it for inspiration, and with good reason. The glorious top-down view, the simple but effective combat, and expertly designed puzzles and dungeons were phenomenal. Add in an emotionally driven soundtrack and gorgeous visual style, and it was a recipe for success. It's funny because as often as we dissect and nitpick storylines in games today, it seemed like the majority of us were satisfied back then with simply going off on an epic quest to save Princess Zelda. Times change, yes, but good gameplay stands the test of time. The developers of Blossom Tales 2 recognize this and have crafted a phenomenal action-adventure that does an exquisite job of recognizing why so many of us fell in love with this genre in the first place. Blossom Tales 2 begins over a campfire where the grandfather of two young children shares with them a heroic tale of a young girl on a quest to take down the evil Minotaur King. This king has captured her brother, and now it's up to you to take care of business and get that brother back that you were kind of mean to be honest. The really cute part about this narrative is that the grandfather actually inserts these two children into the story itself, so you'll be playing as Lily and trying to rescue brother Chris. Obviously, there's no shortage of blood, guts, and violence in the video game industry, but Blossom Tales 2 is a feel-good title through and through. It is not overly violent, there is no real blood to speak of, though you will have some animated violence, of course. This one is, generally speaking, pretty safe even for a younger audience, and as I mentioned, it has some nice morals littered across its 15+ hours that include side quests. The dialogue is not exceptional, it's cute and charming enough, but the overall design of this title is phenomenal. Blossom Tales 2 does not open up with an intense battle or anything, so this is kind of a slow burn for the first 20 or 30 minutes, and I would also argue that character movement speed throughout this game is just a touch slow. The main goal of the game is to explore the overworld, finding 3 dungeons littered across this world and collecting key fragments from each of those dungeons. You'll then combine those fragments to make one mighty key to break into the Minotaur's lair. Also scattered across this world are various villages where you can interact with non-playable characters and purchase some items like heart pieces. Collect 4 of those and you'll get a heart, just as you might have suspected. Maybe get some bottles to fill with potions. You know, all of the basic things that you would expect out of an action-adventure game. Some of the villagers along the journey will also offer you little side quests, like delivering mail, for example. Most of these quests are pretty basic and easy to understand, and they won't take up too much of your time, but they are nice little diversions, and they do add some gameplay hours. Of course, whether you're exploring dungeons or the overworld, you will run into plenty of enemies in this game, and combat is very, very basic. You have your standard sword swing, you can charge that sword attack up and do a little spin maneuver to hit enemies that way, and you collect different items throughout the dungeons and through general exploration that you can also use to solve some of the puzzles and in combat too, like throwing bombs at enemies, or a yo-yo thingy that can cling and works like a grappling hook to get you across ledges. I loved how the developer cleverly implemented all of the different items. For example, at one point, I was fighting a boss and I had to steal his shield away before I could hit him. It's really neat. Or you might have to use a teleport device to get across an area that looks impossible otherwise, but then you really use your brain in this game and you figure out a way. Getting around the world is no problem at all. There are hop air balloon checkpoints that you can access, and these will fly you to other checkpoints that you've already discovered. While the overworld is well designed and generally fun to explore, featuring plenty of secrets of its own, The dungeon design is truly where Blossom Tales 2 shines. There's really only 4 main dungeons, including the final showdown in this game, so that could be viewed as a bit of a disappointment, but when they're this well designed, it becomes more forgivable. All of the puzzles within these dungeons are a blast to figure out, and there's nothing that will have you really scratching your head too much. I got stuck maybe once or twice in this game, and it wasn't a huge deal. This is not a game that will have you doing a YouTube search and having to look up a walkthrough or anything like that. The answers will come to you, and they feel satisfying when they do. In fact, one could maybe make the argument that Blossom Tales 2 skews a little bit too easy. Now, I like the challenge of the puzzles, I really feel like they nailed that, but I was able to mow down most of the enemies and bosses without issue, and that's mostly because I farmed a lot of gold and I collected a lot of hearts early on. I think I ultimately took 6 or 7 deaths in my entire playthrough, and it's no big deal when you do because you more or less start right where you left off. The game does also feature a little bit of alchemy. You can mix different potions into your empty bottles, and if you mix plenty of health potions, which you'll learn that spell pretty early on, you'll be just fine. I did like the alchemy system though, because it was simple to just learn new recipes and not have to worry about randomly throwing shit into a pot. It's also neat that you'll have to go off the beaten path a bit to find certain ingredients and to find certain recipes. Blossom Tales 2 even features other little mini games like fishing, which dare I say isn't all that annoying. The fishing also serves a halfway decent purpose, as you can sell those fish for gold. So with plenty of side objectives, some really great dungeons to explore, and a fun overworld map to go around and to adventure upon, everything works in harmony here and comes together beautifully. As for visuals, I thought Blossom Tales 2 looked pretty nice with its pixelated retro style that wouldn't have felt out of place in the 90s. The dungeons are varied and a delight to explore, while the overworld shines with everything from spooky towns to enchanted woods, though I must say that some of the enemy design is a little bit lackluster, but in the last act of the game you do get more of the Minotaur themed soldiers, and I did enjoy that. This is not a stunning looking title, and it doesn't really offer much that hasn't been seen in other games before in terms of graphics, but it's a nice visual presentation nonetheless. I also really enjoyed the game's soundtrack, which has plenty of heroic overworld themes with orchestration, more subtle, peaceful melodies, and even some great dungeon tracks too. If you enjoyed the music in really any of the Zelda games, you'll probably be on board with this soundtrack. I'm also on board with all of the random pirates. I'm not sure why they're here all the time, but I like it. Sound effects, however, are merely serviceable. The slashing of your sword is decent. Collecting coins is sort of a grating sound, to be honest, and nothing special, but that soundtrack really does steal the show, and it's a perfect match for the gameplay. Blossom Tales 2 is an exceptionally well-designed game with charming visuals and a great soundtrack. The dungeon design is top tier with plenty of clever puzzles and great solutions. The story will warm your heart, and the gameplay delivers as well. Because of this, I'm going to award Blossom Tales 2 the Golden Genie Lamp of Approval. While the main quest is a little bit brief, collecting everything will pack on some hours, and that ultimately makes this one feel like the perfect length. Take up your sword and defeat the Minotaur King. Trust me, he's a dick and totally deserves it. We thank you so much for supporting clickbait-free content here at I Dream of Indie. We couldn't possibly make it without you and these brave indie warriors and legends. At the Indie Warriors tier, we have Bill, Adriana Amato, CJR, Julian Kolbis, Ray Lynn, Marky Mint, Dave Harp, Peekaboo, Lex Noyle, Christian Cruz, PSC, Solaru C, Chic Geek, Ancha277, and Acrophobe. Indie legends include Nathan Moore, Skepticism, Jen Rose, Chris Jackson, Mr. W, Blue Francis 14, The Beefarinis, Business Cody, Chiron, Jace Glover, King of the Hatch, Ophidian Mind, Lord Metroid, Seacoil, and Larkison. Thank you so much for everything that you do for independent developers, publishers, and for I Dream of Indie. Everybody else, head down to the description box below. Let's defeat the gaming echo chamber and bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming.